it's difficult to do something that you find difficult, of course, and it's difficult to do something you don't particularly enjoy. Now, if we're doing self-inquiry properly, which is not always possible at the beginning, let's just say that for now, then you'll find it's something you very much enjoy. And therefore, you'll be motivated and you'll love to do it. And when you love to do something, maybe you can think of an example in your own life of something you love to do. You find a way of doing it, even when you're tired, even when you're exhausted, even when there's not much time, you find ways of doing it. And self-inquiry is like this, eventually. But for most of us, self-surrender or another practice will be easier for us. So I tend to recommend people do the practice they're drawn to. What do you enjoy doing? What is wholesome? What feels intuitively right to you? What are you drawn to do? Knowing that this practice will lead you progressively to, at some point, self-inquiry. The purpose of all these practices are to fill you with love and joy, ease, relaxation and happiness, to remove the dull energy, tamasic energy, and the passionate extroverted energy, the rajasic energy, and leave you feeling blissful, happy, relaxed, peaceful. Sattvic. That's what sattvic means. And this makes your mind calm and restful. When the mind is calm and restful, it will be very easy to do self-inquiry. This initial realization of no doer, in the way I described previously, where you can see that things are rising and falling. This usually I've realized, because I used to talk about liberation more in this type of way, but I realized it doesn't work. As in, most people, they can have a perception to no doership, but the sense of doership keeps on rising intermittently, because actually it's the ego that is seeing, or it has the realization of no doership. It is the ego that actually, it's the mind, the ego mind, that has the realization, oh, there's no one here. And self-realization goes beyond this type of non-doership realization. So whilst many people, even those with relatively busy, active minds, can start to see, if they look at their own experience, oh yes, if I objectively observe my experience, I can start to see that my thoughts just appear. They just arise. And there's no center or entity I can see that is initiating these thoughts. They just appear out of nothingness and they disappear back into nothingness. So there is no doer, there is no thinker. This is a profound realization. But what I've realized through sharing this with people is that this realization by itself is not doesn't seem to be liberating, because what happens is the sense of doership and being a person keeps on rising, keeps on coming back again, and the suffering keeps on coming back again. And then people have this insight intermittently, but it's essentially an intellectual insight, or it's an intuition for the mind somehow. Now, what self-inquiry is asking us to do is not really look at the ego, but to turn towards the subject, to attend to the subject. So when you see that the ego is an object, for example, it's a thought, what is it that sees? that's the subject, it's the consciousness itself. Ordinarily, if someone tries to look at their consciousness, they are already projected out as the ego, and it's that ego projection that's trying to turn back and look at itself, and that's very strenuous. And this is why self-inquiry feels difficult. It increases a sense of separation, and it creates a sense of strain. It can create tension and headaches and things like this, and doesn't feel particularly good. And people are not intuitively drawn to it, on the most part. Again, there may well be exceptions. But if we surrender to God, if we let go and give everything to God, peace comes in, love comes in, joy comes in. We love to do it. Or if we cannot give thanks to God because perhaps we don't believe in God, we can give thanks to the universe for all the many gifts and blessings that we have received. Even the chance to hear these teachings, the chance to have the body that we have, to have the minds that we have, to have the lives we have. If we can give thanks to the universe, of gratitude, then this is a way in. As I said, if you don't believe in any kind of God or even the power of the universe, you can somehow you can let go and experiment with it. When you let go and the thoughts become fewer and the happiness comes in, and this starts to purify you, at some point, the mind becomes very still and very subtle, almost non-existent. It becomes just like, if you imagine like a big tree. Before it became a tree, it was just a little sprout coming out of the ground, just a little shoot. So through devotion, this tree of the mind, this tree of samsara, can recede back into like an infantile form, where it's just a sprout. And that sprout, when it turns in on itself, it just disappears and recedes into the pure consciousness. And this is the self-inquiry. It's kind of like a turning in on itself in which there is no mind. When the mind attends to the self, the mind disappears. And all we're left with is pure peace, pure consciousness without any objective phenomena arising in it, without the arising of a doer, without the arising of an enjoyer either. This is what the scriptures say. This is why people like Nisargadatta Maharaj says that the self is beyond both the doer and the enjoyer. Notice that when the mind, the ego mind, has an insight into non-doership, it may have an insight that it's not the doer, but it doesn't usually have the insight that it's not the enjoyer. It still feels like it's the enjoyer. But it just sees through the notion of doership, but not enjoyership. It's through self-inquiry when we go into ourself and all the phenomena have disappeared. And we can see Nisargadatta Maharaj talks about this. He says everything disappeared. The body, the mind, the world, time, space. And I realized I was that beyond body, mind, world, time, space. So this is a totally much deeper, non-intellectual, non-mental realization. It's not a realization of an individual. It's not like, oh, Tom has realized this, or oh, Adam has realized this. No. Tom may see through the illusion of non-doership, but Adam may not. Or vice versa. Adam may see through the illusion of doership, but Tom may not, for example. But this realization is beyond individuality, time, space, person, body, mind. So it's an introversion of consciousness into itself. What this implies is that the entire body, mind, and world, the entire phenomenal existence as we perceive it, is actually just a projection of consciousness. Like a dream. In a dream, in the entire dream world, the entire dream body and mind, the dream mind you have, the thinking mind in a dream, the dream body you have in a dream, the dream world you appear to be in a dream. These are all projections of the one consciousness. And the waking state is the same. How can the sages say this with such certainty? It's because they've gone into themselves and discovered their nature as consciousness. You can't discover your nature as consciousness through just scrutinizing the waking state without introverting the mind into itself, into the consciousness. If you're just observing phenomena and noting things, and you'll just have insights into Maya, into the dream. You'll realize that in the dream there is no doer. But you won't realize that the dream itself is a projection of consciousness, and that consciousness is infinite and blissful by nature. So this is why Nisargadatta Maharaj's teachings and Ramana's teachings are so strange compared to other teachings. It's because they're a true teaching, and they're teaching you something very profound that goes beyond any kind of intuitive or intellectual understanding that a body-mind can have. But in summary, from a practical point of view, my recommendation is, if you're able to, just still the mind. Just find a way, just do a practice you enjoy. And if it's a wholesome practice, wholesome spiritual practice, it will lead you to calmness. It will lead you away from tamasic energy, initially towards rajasic energy, probably. It will make you less dull and more alive and passionate.
And what are the... Oh, okay, that's helpful. I wasn't sure about the language there, but yeah.
It'll take you away from dull. So, for example, a lot of people, when they first into spirituality, like to sing and pray and dance. And these are wonderful practices, beautiful practices that take us away from dullness and negativity and depression towards enlivenment, extroversion, joy, movement, passion. And then once we've done that for some time, then we'll be drawn more towards stillness and peacefulness, which is called sattva. The extroverted, passionate energy is called rajas. And then we become more interested in things like Tai Chi or meditation. Or if you're into yoga, initially you might have been into quite a fast-paced power yoga. And then you get slowly you find that you're more interested in you're drawn more to the restful yogas, the slower ones. They hold the positions for longer. And it's not so much how far you can reach or how strong you are, but it's just about coming into peace and meditation. And then meditation doesn't become a chore that you kind of have to do to be a good yogi. It becomes something you love because you are entering into it at a point in your journey when it's right for you. And then when the mind becomes very peaceful, it becomes attracted to self-inquiry. It naturally wants to know what it is. Not as the mind, but by being what it is. This is resting as consciousness or abiding as the self. This is what it means to dwell as the I am. It doesn't mean to focus on the ego. It means to go beyond the ego and withdraw into consciousness. It's a supreme type of introversion. And usually it's only a quiet mind that will be able to do this. Now, until the mind is quiet, you will probably prefer to do other things. So do those other things. The suggested one is to pray to God, to love God, to give yourself to Him. to feel his love, to feel the happiness. Allow it to come to you. This will purify you. Purify the three energies. The three energies are called three gunas. Make you more sattvic. And then self-inquiry becomes easy.